Chapter 15, Full Disclosure. The words of Megan Wolfer. After many years of training, I think that I've obtained a sixth sense. This being that I can pick out any obstacle that might be challenging for my dad. I can see it from miles away and then figure out a different route to avoid such obstacles. I also know that sometimes I will need to walk closer to him in case I need to grab his arm for stability. I've also become very good at reading his movements. I can tell when a situation might escalate and result in my dad falling before it even happens. Now the trick is actually moving in time to stop it from happening. I don't even realize that I do these things anymore. It has become a regular habit to watch out for him, even though he probably doesn't like that sort of attention. He is very sneaky sometimes. Being the selfless person that he is, he doesn't like to make us worry any more than we already do. So he doesn't tell us about falls and injuries that happen when we aren't around. Little does he know that this has heightened our senses even more. Now we look for any signs that he may be hurting in case he decides to keep secrets from us. And now, Chapter 15. I'd like to recommend that it be made an official rule that any new diagnosis of SCA would also come with a document of permission or a user agreement. I didn't receive any of these forms, but believe me, they could have been very helpful. I think that doing so could be a positive step for future generations because providing this kind of document would consist of a full disclosure of the ins and outs of the condition. Therefore, a well-informed decision could then be made. I can't seem to fathom a situation when anybody would actually sign one of these neurological documents, but I guess you never know. It just seems that everywhere we turn, and before we can engage in a growing number of activities, we first need to sign a variation of the user agreement, or at least acknowledge that we've read one, which in varying forms of legalized wording declares that we have now read and understood the governing rules. Unfortunately, like a lot of other people, I usually don't take the time to read any of these lengthy waivers before I sign them. Most of these various forms of waivers are standard, and if anything, I might skim the document before I commit. But you can bet that I had thoroughly scrutinized beforehand any document of consent that was about a life-changing neurological disease, and you can believe that I would have had some questions for the doctor. Doc, I can't help noticing that the second paragraph on the first page on this document says something about deceitful nerves, something called neuropathy. Yeah, I think that's one area where I will be requiring just a little bit more information. And I imagine the doctor would have tried to answer this question in a medical way that I probably wouldn't have completely understood anyhow. Well, it may be a hard medical concept to explain or understand, let's say, if your goal is to have a very clear and very accurate picture of the inner workings of the body. But if you want a quick and easy explanation, then it's quite simple, and it can be explained in easy to understand terms. So why don't you break it down for you? There is a town sheriff, or the cerebellum, which has had its hours cut by the city board, or the town people, which is a neurological disease. And the pillars of the community, which are the nerves, have begun to experience some new freedoms. Some of these community pillars, again that would be the nerves, have decided to express their new freedoms by acting in a very contrary and unseemly manner. That's neuropathy, which leads to participation in acts of civil unrest or weird and random pains. I have decided that the best kind of descriptive name for this sort of phenomenon would be the winds of neuropathy. Just like regular winds, these type of winds can range anywhere from dark and violent to a constant whisper. I would have said gentle whisper, but gentle is not a word that has anything to do with these particular winds. My interaction with the winds have proved them to be random, relentless, frustrating, very distracting, and in general, an immense pain in the, well, you fill in the space. And yes, all these are true and usually happening at the same time. Gentle, though? No, not even close. Well, I never saw this kind of disclosure on any document or a user agreement beforehand. There are other areas in which the possession of any foreknowledge would have been very useful and potentially changed the outcome. These include eating, awkwardness in crowded social gatherings, driving in a car, walking on uneven ground, and trying to move gracefully in tight spaces. And when I say tight spaces, I mean any situation that provides me with less than about a 2-foot buffer zone in any given direction. There is a possibility, though, that this is the whole point. If all the conditions pertaining to future challenges and frustrations were first spelled out for us on a document, none of us would even have ever accepted them. I know that I would have never signed the bottom line when I had first read the SCA sales pitch. That is, of course, unless all the positives had been clearly spelled out. Even so, this does not mean that I am saying that I definitely would have signed up for a lifetime supply of ataxia. No, not at all. But I do want to make it clear that I am acknowledging that there have been some positives that have come out of my handicap. It has slowed me way down and given me more time to reflect on my life and the lives of those around me. It has made me a more thoughtful, compassionate, and understanding person. I have met through social media and many support groups literally hundreds of people from all around the world that I would never have had the cause to reach out to before a diagnosis of SCA. I will not assume to speak for anyone else here when I say that in the light of these things, I think that there have been definitely a few trade-offs. Again, though, this is all in hindsight because as far as I know, no pre-existing form will ever provide us with a full disclosure. The way that I see it is that it's not about what I knew before SCA, it's what I've learned after and how I choose to live with that knowledge. But maybe, just maybe, there could be a childhood vaccine for ataxia. I didn't get my first cavity until I was 19. Why exactly am I telling you this? Well, it's not because I'm thinking that this is information that you will necessarily need to know, nor can I ever imagine that you might need this knowledge if you ever find yourself entrenched in a heated game of Trivial Pursuit. But if you'll indulge me and hang with me just a few minutes, I think then you'll understand in which direction I'm heading, and hopefully it'll turn out to be something that you can really sink your teeth into. I truly believe that my lack of childhood cavities was due to the fact that I grew up in a home where personal hygiene and dental care were very important. From as far back as I can remember, my mother would give my brothers and I a small fluoride pill every morning. If I could have taken a small anti-ataxia pill when I was a kid, maybe my body would have developed a natural, enamel that would have kept the rotting cavity of SCA from forming. Well, it's a nice thought anyway.